Hey there, and welcome back to another My Hero Academia video. And today we'll be talking about the latest episode to drop, episode 7, Disaster Walker, which follows up from the cliffhanger ending of Gigantomachia waking up, Shigaraki activating the Nomu horde that survived the attack on the city to divide up the hero army and prevent him getting overwhelmed, and then him, Endeavor, and Ryukyu going head to head whilst Aizawa keeps his quirk blocked. And yeah, every episode has been pretty epic so far this season. And this one, based on those cliffhangers alone, was already shaping up to be no exception to this. Massive moment after massive moment. Just incredible. And in my opinion, it very much lived up to that. But before we go any further, I would like to say that I have read the manga and am aware of any relevant future plot points and details. But for the purpose of this review, I'm only going to be using the anime as a reference point so that anime-only fans can watch along and join in too. And so, with all that being said, let's jump into the episode. So before the theme song plays, we have a few little shots just to remind us that a world exists outside of the battles we're seeing. There's a news chopper flying over the ruins of Jakku City, pretty much just shitting their pants because of the carnage that's been wrought, talking about how people are panicking and that police and heroes are working together to get people out of the city. Whilst in other locations, life just goes on. Deku's mum's going about her day, shopping it looks like, whilst Bakugo's mum seems to be looking through his baby book, which, that was very cute. And I guess all of this just really grounds the story in some reality. It reminds you that there is something our heroes are fighting for and dying to protect. Just ups the emotional stakes. But yeah, after a few more clips of various different characters, the intro plays and we get into the episode proper. And so then, when we return, we have a quick recap of what's been happening in the ruins of Jakku. Shigaraki's just sort of clowning around, showing off his body's base strength by dodging all of Endeavor and Ryukyu's attacks, whilst the minor hero team charges towards the battle to try and overwhelm him with strength in numbers, only to be confronted with a bunch of Nomu that Shigaraki's managed to awaken. So yeah, this is actually a great move by Shigaraki. Keeps aid away from the heroes. And on top of that, those things are guaranteed to be able to kill a bunch of the lesser heroes. After all, just like Dr. Garaki says, they're near high-ends, just as strong, but lacking the critical thinking skills that sets a high-end apart. And so, if the regular high-end Nomu were able to push characters like Mirko and Endeavor to their limits, how can these minor heroes even stand a chance against enemies that are only slightly weaker than that? There's a massacre incoming, and yeah, on rewatch, you can actually hear that a bunch of the minor heroes actually get killed over and over in the background of the main battle scenes. Poor dudes. Most of them just have no chance. Anyway, the early fight between Endeavor and Shigaraki's great. Really love that Shigaraki's personality's evolved. Love his cheekiness. Like after beating Endeavor and Ryukyu into the dirt, he stands above them with his fist in the air like Endeavor did when he beat the Nomu, just to rub it in a little. I mean, he even has the opportunity to finish them right there, but he chooses not to. He wants to mock them instead. Anyway, Gran Torino then leaves Deku and Bakugo to go and help, and it's like, why would you tell them to hide? Why would you think that would work? Last time he teamed up with Deku, he literally disobeyed his orders to go and fight the hero killer Stain to protect his friend. Why wouldn't you expect him to do the exact same thing here? Especially since he knows the reason Shigaraki's here is to try and steal his quirk. And on top of that, we also know that he watched the sports festival. That's how he put in the request to have Deku train with him. So that means the dude also knows that Bakugo is crazy. Silly old man. And then we get a massive dose of feels, as Shigaraki notices Aizawa in the distance and decides that it's probably time to take him down, which in turn prompts Aizawa to square up with a knife, ready to fight to protect his students, only for said students to jump in and attack Shigaraki, declaring that Aizawa's their protector, their mentor, their guide, and that he always gives his all to protect them. And so for them, the worst thing that could happen is losing him, both because of his quirk, but also because of who he is. And honestly, so true. The dude is a beast, and is honestly such a good teacher and mentor to these kids. Also, the water in his eyes got noticeably thicker when they said that, and he realized how much they cared for him, so that's very wholesome. On top of that, it seems that Deku has gotten his head in the game, far more than the other adults. He and Bakugo both know that it's game over if Shigaraki kills Aizawa. It means Decay is back and everybody is gonna die. And so they know they have to fight, they can't just stay on the sidelines. Whereas I kind of think the adults feel a bit handicapped, almost because they still feel that need to try and prioritize the lives of the junior heroes. And so I think that does hold them back somewhat. And then there's a really epic fight sequence where each of our heroes tries to get involved and fight off Shigaraki, but he's really just too strong. His strength's immense. And so it would take an All Might level character to actually bring him down. All these guys can do is chip away at him slowly and intercept him with a new attack when it looks like he's going to try to kill somebody. And yeah, the fight goes on, he dodges basically everything, and he starts thinking about kidnapping Deku and just straight up leaving, before he starts feeling All For One's consciousness peeking out, which causes him to call Deku little brother. And honestly, this whole sequence, this drew a really sharp parallel between the brothers. One for All passed on his quirk not to enact his own will, but to cultivate a power to keep the world safe. And so as each person passes it along, they continue to grow the power, until it comes to Deku and the vestiges appear, their lingering will. But unlike All For One, these aren't to force him down a specific road, but they guide him along and help him out. Whereas on the other hand, All For One cultivated his quirk on his own, and thus, his will is far more pronounced within it. He wants Shigaraki to be him and do what he would do. But as Shigaraki says, he doesn't want that. He wants to be better than that. As in his eyes, All For One, whilst being awesome, did fail. And honestly, this draws another contrast to Deku, as it feels like Deku literally does want to be All Might. He wants to be just as good as him, and he doesn't view him as a failure and something to surpass, but more something to equal. And so really, these characters and their quirks have become the antithesis of each other, and it's actually quite compelling. And then Gran Torino gets involved and yells at Shigaraki about how he's trampling his grandmother's memory, and how he basically needs to die because he makes All Might sad. And honestly, bit harsh to victim blame him so relentlessly. They know what his life has been like, don't they? Whilst they can want him gone, I don't think they should act like it's his fault, you stupid old sponge. Anyway, he gets swatted away, and we end our look at this storyline for the episode with Shigaraki getting nuked by Bakugo, roundhouse kicked by Deku, and then nuked again by Endeavor. So, leaving you on that cliffhanger ending, expecting him to be all beat up and having to dig deep, but honestly, I'm kind of expecting for him to be only slightly injured after that, if at all. I think it's going to play out like this. They'll recap what happened to him next episode, the dust is going to clear, and then they're all going to shit themselves. And honestly, he'll probably take out one of them straight away as well, and I'm guessing Gran Torino. But then, after a transitional scene with Mission Control, we move on to the Mountain Villa battle, where a bunch of Class 1A and 1B students are just hanging around, waiting to be back up, not being called in just yet. But then Jiro starts to panic because, well, she can hear Gigantomachia, who's burst out of the ground and has gathered up the League of Villains core team, whilst Darby's also forced Skeptic to come along to fight. And so, off Gigantomachia goes, charging full steam ahead trying to get to Shigaraki, whilst Mount Lady tries in vain to hold him back and ends up just getting pushed along for a while. Meanwhile, a bunch of the heroes that had been nearby have been scattered by his arrival, forcing the heroes that were guarding the students to go and fight, leaving the students all alone. And honestly, I feel like this is a worst case scenario. The students have no idea what's going on, no contact with anyone, and the pros that were with them have just left. And then on top of that, there's this ominous earth rumble every few seconds. I'd be shitting my pants. And then Redestro gives the orders to the Liberation Army to just follow the big boy, support him, and try to kill all the heroes that are trying to take him down and enact their glorious revolution. Gaten gets involved and takes out a few heroes before being taken out in turn by Cementos. But the rest of the villains do seem to be doing quite well for themselves. Anyway, Midnight, riding on the back of Kamui Woods, arrives to help Mount Lady, who immediately gets tossed away by Gigantomachia like she weighs nothing at all, and when the pair try to get up close to his head to knock him out with her gas, Woods gets blasted by a Darby surprise attack. And so he's forced to launch Midnight the rest of the way. And she's almost there when she gets hit by Mr. Compress, who chucks debris at her that takes her out of the fight. And by the looks of it, this attack signed her death warrant. There's a bunch of villains charging right at her in the background of where she landed, and she's covered in blood and seems quite injured. And so, in what I assume are her final moments, she tries to think of who would be the best choice to take Gigantomachia down, and realizes that now it has to be up to the students. And in particular, it's up to Momo, who has extremely good leadership skills and strategic thinking abilities. And so she radios her and tells her to disregard any laws about using her quirk for this fight and make some anesthetic. It's do or die at this point. They can't afford to lose. And so yeah, this promises a very epic class team-up episode where they all try to dogpile Gigantomachia and try to defeat him. And obviously, they will have to fail in order for the villains to turn up in the city, which is where they really need to be. But it's still an exciting prospect, and it's gotten me very hyped. And so yeah, that's where the episode ends, with Midnight clearly about to die, and our students about to make their own mark, as we see in the preview. So, it's honestly hard to even feel sad about Midnight, because they've left us off with such a hype moment. And so yeah, great episode. Next week can't come soon enough. And so with all that being said, these are just my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? You like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know.